Good morning, everyone. If you would make your way in. While you're doing that, I have a couple of things to do. One is to introduce Brandon and Katie in Justice. But before I do that, I do want to let you know, I got a text yesterday from Travis Blevins. Travis used to attend this church till they moved, and he was actually part of our missions, and he did multiple trips to Ukraine. He got word that one of the girls who used to be one of our interpreters, her sister, who is a member of the church, just won the visa lottery in Ukraine. So her and her husband now are obtaining visas to come to the United States. And because they do have a connection to Broken Arrow, they were kind of like, man, I would love, Broken Arrow to be our place where we go. So one of the things that are going to be looked for is a place for her and her husband to live while they get their feet on their ground, if that makes sense. And I know we have some families even here already doing that, so that's pretty cool. So the possibility, and you've heard all the details I know, so I don't know any more than that. But if you're interested in that and you would like some details in that and you have a place where you could host them, that would be fantastic. I do not know what all that entails, so that's what I'm saying. The details would have to be coming forth. But if you're interested, you can certainly get with me and we'll do that. Brandon and Katie, you just nearly have to say, obviously, it's a God thing that they're part of our missions. The blessing that we've had with this relationship for 10 plus years has been wonderful. It happened and it began back in 2010. I was attending a conference at Sunset, and Brandon and Katie, I met them. We had lunch together, and we just, basically I was able to say something like this. I'm not on the missions committee. I don't have anything really to do with that except for I get to go on mission trips, every once in a while. But it would be cool because we go to Ukraine. You're wanting to go to Ukraine. It'd be awesome to see if something would come of that. And without going through all the minute details, I don't want to take up too much of his time. About 6 months later, is that what you said? 6 months later, you guys were able to come here and kind of work with the church for a while, still not knowing all the support and how that would come. And again, another God thing. But it has been, over the years, an incredible blessing to be connected with them, whether it's from our actual trips over to Ukraine, where you guys have been a part of that, but definitely our support of you and the work, you and Katie and Justice, and the work that you guys are continuing to do. Come on up, we'll have a prayer together, and then you'll have the rest of our time for our Bible classes. Let's bow in prayer. Father, we are grateful for Brandon and Katie. We're grateful for the love for the Lord that they both have. We're grateful for their dedication to spreading the word, and especially we're thankful for the connection with Ukraine. Father, you know everything that's going on right now, so you know the heartache, the struggles, the difficulties, the victories that are happening because your word spreads in any environment. And Father, thank you for allowing us, through Brandon and Katie, to be a part of that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hi, everybody. Seeing some faces for the first time since this morning. Said hello to a lot of people. It's very good to be here. It's been a while. It's been 14 months or so, I think, since the last time we were here. Have a lot of stuff going on inside because it's very good to be here. There's so good to see your faces, but it's my job right now to share with you what's been going on in our lives, and some of that's pretty heavy and still is for us. And so I'm going to try to balance the joy and the sorrow I'm feeling at the same time. I want to share where we've been, what we've been doing, and what's next. A lot of people this year have apologized for not knowing what we're doing or where we are. And I'm like, I don't know what we're doing or where we are. I don't expect for you to have to do that either. So no shame there. No, just take that away. You don't need to say, I'm sorry, I can't remember, because we can't either. It's been an interesting year for anything in Ukraine, including missions. And We left our home in Kyiv, in the capital, 7 months ago and have not been able to return yet. I'll tell you a little bit about the story. So we avoided leaving Ukraine for as long as possible. The troops, there was actually a Russian troop buildup in April of 2021. Just kind of built it up. There were headlines, nothing came of it. And then it started again. I think it was October, maybe November, started again. And so from the Ukrainian point of view, it's just like, yeah, we know. Like, they like to show off. They like to flex their muscles, and there wasn't much more to it than that. But then the troops grew, and the United States started throwing around the word imminent over and over. And you can only say imminent so many times before you don't believe something's very imminent anymore. So we got some advice from somebody who said, I can't make the decision for you, but make sure you have a go bag ready and make sure there's gas in your car, which gave us pause because we thought maybe we should have a car. Because we don't have a car. We've never had a car in Ukraine and didn't ever want a car in Ukraine. But with the prospect of people possibly evacuating and planes being grounded, we thought if we want to stay longer, we should have a way to get out ourselves. So we bought a car in the period of just a few days, finalized it on Saturday, and then over the weekend, the United States, the headlines started to suggest that the embassy was going to move away from Kyiv. And so we bought the car Saturday, and on Monday loaded everything up in it that we could and drove west to the city of Lviv, thinking, well, if the embassy thinks it's safe there, we might as well go there. But that was really hard to do. That was a very difficult decision because at that point still, it wasn't being taken very seriously in Ukraine. At that point still, on a Sunday morning with our congregation, anybody have any prayer requests? It wasn't a prayer request. It was that far away from people's minds. And so when we announced that we were leaving, there was very much a sense of we're betraying people, possibly making things a bigger deal. Justice told his Bible class that final Sunday we were there, we were going to Western Ukraine because the soldiers were coming to Kyiv and were going to kill everyone. At which point, one of the Bible class teachers said, "Really? Where did you get that information?" Thankfully, the other Bible class teacher calmed everybody down. So it was hard to leave. The school was still going. The director was running. And so I was going to be teaching online, which I did, from Lviv. We were there for 10 days teaching remotely. I think, do I have a picture? Yeah, okay. It's really dark. Kyiv, more or less central Ukraine. There's where we went. Lviv, about an 8-hour car ride away, 6 to 8 hours. So we were there. And as we were there, things were getting more serious. And Lviv is a classic European, old European city, tiny streets, cobblestone, beautiful, but also the logical city to run to if you're getting away. And in the 10 days that we were there, it started to fill up. And the city's full of these crazy one-way streets, and we started thinking, if we have to get out of here quickly, we're probably not going to be able to. And then we got word that at that point we started thinking, should we stay in Ukraine, just go to a different city near the border? But then we got word that Katie's grandma was getting sick, and the thought occurred to both of us that if we need to get out of the country quickly, and something happens to be going on, this is probably not going to be very good. Then there was the announcement that the embassy staff was going to move out of Ukraine completely and into Poland. So we made the very difficult decision that we were going to go ahead and leave Ukraine with no war going on, no invasion happening. And we had made arrangements with a missionary family in the city of Sopot, Poland, who had a building with a visiting teacher apartment for their ministries there. And they said we could come there, I could teach remotely there, and we could just stay in nearly in the same time zone, stay around what was going on without having to fly all the way back to the States and all of that, and hopefully go back to Ukraine in a few days. So on February 23rd, we decided tomorrow, Katie and Justice are going to fly to Sopot. That was a direct flight from where we were. That was going to be in the evening the next day, and then after they got off, I would drive the car and take a day or two to get up there, because it was 8+ hours plus the border. So that was the plan. We split up our suitcases, got ready to go for the next day. And then at 4:30 or so in the morning, someone we were traveling with called us and said, I just heard that all the planes have been grounded. And as we were trying to wake up in our 4 a.m. stupor, I got a text from someone in Kyiv who said, we hear explosions. We're not even reading about it yet in the news. So we got up very quickly. The car was parked a little whiles away. I had to run to it, and again, the one-way streets really messed us up trying to get ready and get the car packed and get out as quickly as possible. We made an arrangement with one of the preachers at the church in that city to meet on our way to the border to give him some cash, because we knew that they were going to be needing a lot to help a lot of people. And when we stopped we got out of the car, I was talking to him, he and I both heard in the distance an explosion. And then after a few minutes, another explosion, which we found out later was blowing up a television tower, communications tower. So we were just 40 minutes from the border. We got to the border, and we were there for only 7 hours. We were at the very front of people finding out, and as we stood at the border, it's the world reacting. February 24th. It's Justice. As we were at the border, the line behind us just kept growing and growing, and within hours, that was an 18 to 24 to 36 hour wait. We got there right at the front of it all. So we drove 7 hours to the border, and then we drove 4 hours to Warsaw, made contact with some Christians there, spent the night at their house. And while we were lying in a warm bed, going through the horrors of the day's news, we knew all of our friends and church family were suffering in shock, sheltering, and this is a group of people from our congregation that were sheltering in the church building.
Твоя во все роды, слава Тебе и величие, слава в веках и народах, сила Твоя безгранична, милость Твоя во все роды.
It was hard to realize that they were where they were and we were where we were, and to take in what was happening. A few days later, this was our neighborhood. A missile had been intercepted and broke up.
Вот началось.
And it was unreal. Still is unreal. Thankfully, there were a few things that happened in our area the first few days, but since then, nothing's happened. And our apartment building is still fine. From one of those incidents is some of the roof of our building, I guess, got damaged, but that was it. And so we're very thankful for that. So we weren't going to Poland to start a ministry to refugees. We were going to Poland to stay close to Ukraine. But this happened as we were planning to leave. And so we got to the church building, which is also where the missionaries live. It's a mother and her grown daughter that are there together. They have a huge building, tiny congregation. And there wasn't a discussion, really. We got there, and we didn't say, well, are we going to do this? We're not going to do this. It was, we have the building, and we said, we have the people, and we got to work. And within a few days, this church transformed. They have like a half basement area, lots of big rooms, big IKEA order, lots of beds coming through. Remodeling the bathrooms, getting a shower, getting a bathtub downstairs, doing whatever could be done as soon as possible as we were waiting for our first refugees to arrive. But when I say refugees, what I mean is our friends, which was a hard thing to say out loud. This is after a couple had already arrived and were trying to translate signs for the building and help people fill out forms, and it was pretty crazy. That was after it was done. That's the big room. We had our first big group came from our congregation in Kyiv. They traveled several days to get out of the country in what sounded like stories from World War II, waiting on a platform for hours and hours in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, for a train that never came, and then another train that came and didn't stop, and then a train that came and opened only one of the doors, and the rushing of thousands of people trying to get in, the overflowing of people in the cars having to sit on just their bags for the whole night, splitting up the group, just trying somehow to get west. And then they arrived to us. Our female staff members from the Ukrainian Bible Institute made it to where we were, and they got right to work doing the things that they're very good at, and we were able to coordinate and grow the ministry even faster and much better. Oops, skipping now. Okay. The first few weeks were some of the hardest of our lives. We were suddenly working around the clock, 12-hour, 16-hour, 18-hour, 22-hour days, meeting people at all hours at the train station, and getting phone calls and messages from people in Ukraine, trying to figure things out. Getting the people that arrived asking us a million questions. Where do we do this? How can we do this? And we're like, we just got here. We didn't know anything about anything. Every day getting emails and texts from people all around the world at all hours, all with an emergency situation of trying to get somebody out of the country. We were living at the building ourselves, and there's just always something going on. We weren't eating well, which of course was making us not feel well either. We really struggled as a family. Justice especially kind of instantly lost his parents for a few weeks. We were around, but not giving him much attention, and it showed in everything, in every way. He started having night terrors, and he'd never had them before in his life. We were taking stress out on him. And so we were really thankful when my mom was able to come visit and help a little bit with that. And then on top of just the stress of the situation, just the stress of the work itself, kept forgetting, I guess it was only in moments of quiet and silence here or there where you remembered we're going through this too. We've lost our home too. We ran away for safety too. In a sense, refugees, though not technically, dealing with the pain of knowing what our friends were going through, dealing with a sense, a version of survivor's guilt, evacuator's guilt, I guess. Things did start to normalize. My mom came, that was a blessing, but it was hard. It was really hard. We had our normal trip to the States planned for the summer, but Katie's grandma kept getting worse. And so we decided to push our summer trip up to mid-April so that we could see Katie's grandma. And that kind of interfered with a trip I had already had planned that the Sunset International Bible Institute asked me to go on, where I would join a small group of guys traveling not all, but some bordering nations to see the ministries happening to the Ukrainian refugees to find out where can we best use the funds that people are donating and all of that. So we flew to the States to see Katie's grandma, and then 10 days later, I flew back to Europe for 2 weeks and basically joined half of these guys, because half were just hitching a ride with us to go somewhere. But we traveled a lot in a car. It was all in a van, started in Romania, even went into Western Ukraine for a couple of days, which was fantastic to see friends that we hadn't seen in a while, and also just to go back, because I still remember very clearly driving through the border, leaving the day the war started, wondering if we would ever come back. So it was special, it was significant to go back into Ukraine. We drove through Hungary and saw a place in Slovakia and several ministries in Poland before ending the trip in Sopot, where we had been. So it was really good and a beneficial trip. In the States, we had, there's Dima Grishuk on the left. I know you recognize him. Denis Zolotaryov on the right, who Broken Arrow also supports him and his family. The man in the middle is Romanian, and he was our driver, but he's also just one of the ministers in Romania who's doing a whole lot to help a whole lot of people. This is us having dinner with a portion of the drivers. I think probably a lot of you are aware, the Volunteer Brothers group that Dima Grishuk started when the war began, just coordinating people who had vans, who had cars, to take aid to the east and bring people back to the west. And that has grown to over 30 vehicles, over 50 drivers, and they continue to do an amazing work there. So we visited several places in the States. We got to spend some good time with family. We traveled a lot like we normally do, but it was less reporting and it was more family time. So we were really grateful for that. We got to be here for my dad's 80th birthday. Had some very important UBI meetings. The reality that this thing isn't going to end anytime soon. What is the school going to be? When do we reopen? How do we do those things? So we had some really good meetings. And we were also encouraged, Katie and I were encouraged to talk to a grief and trauma counselor, which we did. Fantastic lady who works with Great Cities Missions, flew down to see us for a couple of days in California. Very good talking with her, realizing that we were suffering more than we thought we were, which I guess that's progress. Like when you find out you're actually worse than you thought you were, so that feels good to know. But during our summer travels, we made a decision that was important for us as a family. We decided that since we're not going home anytime soon, we need to decide where we want to call our home temporarily until we can go home. And we decided that Sopot, Poland was not where we wanted to be. There's a whole list of reasons, but the short ones are just that it's far away from the border. and we wanted to be able to travel in and out of Western Ukraine more frequently to see people and visit churches that are over there. Western Ukraine still, thus far, has been untouched by everything happening, so it's not a safety concern so much right now. We wanted to be closer to Ukraine, and I wanted to be somewhere where I could focus fully on the Ukrainian Bible Institute, because being in the middle of a refugee work meant there was always something else for me to do, and I felt my job as the director of the school really suffering, and we thought it would be more healthy for us to get more space. So after returning to Poland, we took a little survey trip, visited two places in Ukraine. We were really considering going back to Ukraine, and had a really great experience in both of those places, and almost made the decision to move to Western Ukraine, but as we thought more practically about what it would mean if things continued, we didn't want to have to evacuate again. We didn't want to have to run again and then find a new place to live again, and so it seemed more wise to just not do that yet. So our backup plan was a city called Košice. It's in Slovakia. It's down in the west. It is an hour and a half from the border with Ukraine, and the border, like when you cross the border, is the Ukrainian city of Uzhhorod. You just cross the border, and then there's like apartment buildings. There's not like the big drive to another city. And so it's a real easy way to get into Ukraine, and from there, trains, buses, whatever, or a car if we're driving. There's a small congregation there. They have their own building. They just thought it was a great idea for us to join them, and understanding what our position is, what our goals are, and all that. And they just said, we would love to have you, and you can use an office at the building, and it'll be great for you. So after a lot of prayer and seeking advice, we decided we would go to Košice. So right before this trip, we drove our stuff down there, left it there, and took the trip here. So after this trip, we will go back to Košice. We'll spend some time finding an apartment, and that will be our home base for our work with the Ukrainian Bible Institute, which includes the school stuff, but it also includes a lot of coordinating of these ministries, this refugee humanitarian aid and all that too. So some words, some thoughts, some news about the Ukrainian Bible Institute. We had a contingency plan. We were anticipating that something could happen. And so we went over the plan a couple of times with the students, including the day before the war started, about what was going to happen if these scenarios played out. And one of them did. And so the students came right away to the school that morning. They collected 2 months of their support to help them. And classes were closed for the rest of the spring term. We were in the middle of our 25th year as a school. It was very difficult that this was it. This was the way the school was going to be. All of our female students evacuated the country. Our male students, of course, were not able to, but they all got to work wherever they were or wherever they landed, working, volunteering places, helping churches, and very proud of what they were doing. But as the chaos normalized, not that things got normal, but the chaos became normal, there were a lot of people kind of hanging out in a lot of places, either not able to work or working, but wishing there were other things to be involved in. And a lot of our students said, when are we going to start classes back? And so we made the decision to begin classes as normal at the end of August, but COVID style, only online, which was only the logical thing because our students were everywhere, and actually was a beautiful thing to be able to connect that way. So we are part-time only right now. Before, the students studied all day, every day for 2 years, and right now they are just having one class every afternoon. Each level has one class every afternoon, and more or less sticking to the normal schedule, aside from the fact that they only have one class. So I shared last summer, that UBI was looking toward the future. What's the future of the school going to be? What's the next 25 years going to be like for this school? And I think we're starting to see it. I don't anticipate a war will go on for 25 years, but this has to be our focus right now. Online has to be the focus, and what that is allowing is us to reach people in ways we've never done before, where we have students joining us from all over Europe. We have some of our alumni just sitting in on classes because they have the time and they would like to. We have auditors, people that are just in these refugee centers, just joining us online and studying the Bible in this way for the first time ever. And it's really encouraging to see how people are responding to it and to see the reach that we can have. Obviously, the residential school, being in class in person, is so vital. But it's so impossible right now. And so I'm encouraged to see how this is pushing us and how it's encouraging people in ways we didn't anticipate. Also, because it's online, beforehand, if you wanted to attend UBI, you had to go at either the fall and enter the school or before the spring term started. But now, because it's online, every class, we're putting invitations out online, inviting people to start studying with us then. And so people are coming in, and it's great. It's been fantastic. As we look to the future, I was trying to think who we needed to help us get there. And back in May, I invited Rob Heineman. Some of you may remember him or know of him. I invited him, and we worked with them in Kharkiv as our teammates for a long time. They've been in the States for 7 years. They've been talking about trying to get to do more foreign work again as a family, and I invited him to join the school, and they said yes. So their clan is going to be joining us in Slovakia as well in mid-November. Rob is a fantastic teacher, but he's also a web designer and knows a whole lot about technology. He built Sunset's online program for the very first time years ago. He knows all about those things to help us get where we need to be now, and I'm really excited that we will be doing that together and literally will be physically together in Slovakia. His presence also came, this was not planned in any way, but Dima Grishuk chose to step away from UBI after 16 years as a teacher. And so him stepping away and then afterwards Rob agreeing to join us really helps with the responsibilities that Dima left behind. Something else we're trying to do is speak to the times. And so we have a woman from Alabama. She's a teacher. She's come over and taught the ladies' class for years in Ukraine. She was very anxious to help in any way possible. She was doing research on how to help kids during times of war, putting together a book that's been translated now into Ukrainian that UBI helped publish. And she came over and led some seminars in Poland with us at the church building, but also traveling to all the different centers in the area and presenting to mostly moms and teenagers if they were there. But it was really well received, not only by the Ukrainians themselves, but by these people who lead the centers, and everyone was very excited about it. The lady that sat down with Katie and me as a grief and trauma counselor, we invited her to lead a seminar at the school on helping during times of trauma. And we had that just I'm getting my weeks confused now, 2 weeks ago, I guess. 5 days, 3 hours a day. She was with our students, and we invited a bunch of our alumni and other ministers who are serving right now, in particular those serving refugees, and invited them. We had over 30 to 40 people every day joining us for the classes, and it went fantastic. People responded so much to it, and it was a focus on how do you provide actual, useful, beneficial care to people going through times of trauma, and also pay attention to how you're doing. How are you going through the times of trauma? And it touched on some really important topics like suicide and domestic abuse, and it really touched a lot of our students. And I was really, really thankful that that happened. The war is not over. It's not even close to being over. Ukraine is doing fantastic. Ukraine is everybody expected things to fall within days, and then everybody expected things to fall within weeks and then months. But now we're here almost 8 months later, and Ukraine is just blowing all those expectations out of the water. And that's fantastic. And the news is good, and we should report on that good news, which is what's being done. But that doesn't mean they're still not fighting an extremely large army that they are outnumbered by incredibly, that happens to have a lot of nuclear weapons as well. So though good things are happening, nothing good, like the change hasn't happened yet. Nobody is safe. And even though Ukraine's doing great on the battlefield, every day Russia's sending missiles into random cities and residential buildings and people evacuating, and it's heartbreaking. Just a week ago, during our seminar on trauma, there was one night where Russia sent some missiles over into an area where there were humanitarian aid vehicles evacuating people, and over 30 people died. And that same night, a lot of firepower went into the city of Dnipro. We have a student there who is there. And one of our students who's in Poland now is from the other city. And they were trying to study with us, but you could tell that they were far away in their thoughts. And we asked the man who was in the city that night how he was doing, and he's like, we didn't sleep, and we don't know what's going to happen. And this is how it's going. Good change hasn't happened yet, just good progress on the battlefield, which we celebrate, but don't think that means it's over anytime soon. In the last 7 months, more than 6,000 civilians have been killed. More than 9,000 have been injured. There are over 5 million refugees in Europe. 3.5 million of them have applied for temporary residency. So it's still very dark times. But one of the blessings from the darkness of evil is that the light of good is so much easier to recognize during the dark times. And something that this whole situation has taught me is to pray more specifically, to stop saying, make everything okay, God be with them. Like, to speak specifically, what do I mean by that? Keep them safe. Push them out. Justice in his prayers for weeks prayed, thank you for everyone in this world except for Putin and his army. And I thought that was great. That was specific. One of those stories, some light in the darkness, is about this lady, Natasha Puishnik, and her son, Sergei. Natasha is one of our dearest Ukrainian friends. She's been Justice's nanny, babysitter. She's helped him learn the language. She lives in Kyiv, or has lived in Kyiv, but she's from the city of Mariupol. And when the war started, her son was in Mariupol. And Mariupol means a lot to us. That's where we used to live as well, a long time ago. So she evacuated with the church. She had that terrible story of traveling in the trains and trying to get to us in Poland. And while she was on that trip, she lost contact with her son. On March 2nd, the world lost contact with Mariupol. And Natasha's one of those people that always smiles all the time, is happy, 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 and positive. And she came to us in Poland, and her smile started to fade She was not getting any news about her son. Also with her son was her sister and her niece. After a couple weeks of silence, we started to get news from Mariupol, but none of it was good. And after some time, she was able to contact some neighbors that had gotten out, and the neighbors said they hadn't seen her family anywhere, but had confirmed that her apartment and her sister's apartment had been destroyed. We prayed every night that God would bring news about how Sergei was doing, and her sister and niece. And 2 weeks went by, and there was nothing, and 3 weeks went by, and there was nothing. And then on the 22nd day, she was playing with Justice, and she got a phone call from an unknown number, answered the phone to a 1-second call that said, "Mom, it's me, we're okay," and then lost the signal. So we rejoiced at that immensely, knowing at least that much. But there were so many questions because we didn't know where he was, we didn't know what okay meant, we didn't know anything. And 2 days later, they were able to get out and get to safety, and we were there when he called her on video for the first time. Found out that that call came from the rumors going around that if you go to a certain street corner at this certain time of day, you can maybe catch a signal. And that's what happened. In late April, her family made it to her in Poland. Evacuating, they were in, Mariupol was taken. It's in the Russian-controlled areas. So they evacuated into Russia, drove up to St. Petersburg, and then around into Estonia, and then came down to us in Poland. And I was there a few days after when they were all together. There's another amazing answered prayer that has to do with the church in Mariupol, the church that sheltered for 51 days in Mariupol. And tonight, during our time together, I'm going to tell you that story. So I hope you can be here for that. And through these dark times, people are coming to the Lord in all different ways. I've heard from different refugees that maybe God has allowed this to happen so that I would pay attention to him for the first time. This is Bogdan and his wife Olya, their son Karen, and their little 3-year-old daughter Sophia, who has Down syndrome. They were not going to leave Kharkiv. This is the family that essentially replaced us in Kharkiv. He was dead set on leaving. We're not going to leave. And then the bombing, the shelling happened in their neighborhood, and then on their street, and then just across the yard. And so they made the decision to leave. He said he drove away from the city just with tears streaming down his eyes because he felt like a traitor. But they made it to us in Sopot, and Bogdan is one of those people that if he doesn't work, he thinks he's going to die anyway. And so he got right to work with making contacts with the refugee centers there, taking them supplies, inviting people. He's an evangelist who just invites. And every Sunday there are visitors at the church in Poland because of him. He continues to work and do great things. There's a better picture of the whole family. And people are coming to the Lord. 2014 was when the war first started in Ukraine, and it was an Acts 8 moment for Ukrainians. For the Bible Belt of Ukraine anyway, the southeast. People were pushed all over the rest of Ukraine. Churches were either revitalized or new churches were started. But that was just in Ukraine. And through what's happening this year, there's this other Acts 8 moment happening where Ukrainians are being scattered across Europe and even further, and doing the same thing wherever they land, revitalizing tiny churches among Europe, that have been just so struggling as far as numerically, and where are we? They're getting a shot in the arm of passionate Ukrainians. And it's good to see how God is using this dark time for his glory. So, as always, we thank this church so much for your partnership. It's been a while. It's been more than 10 years. I'm excited about the future of the Ukrainian Bible Institute. Please do not stop praying for the school, for Ukraine, for us as a family. Please do not stop supporting the Ukrainians that this church supports. Now more than ever do they need it, no matter where they are. Many people in Ukraine and across Europe and even in the world are being blessed by those you support right now. We are here until the beginning of November. Don't have an exact date quite yet, so we look forward to spending time with as many of you as we're able to. We love you and look forward to talking more about how we've been doing. Thank you so much.